Just to make sure what you are doing, know what you are doing, it is about microservices. Okay? The second thing is we are doing it first time. This thing we are doing first time, and we didn't even try it. So. Okay, I didn't. Where is the clicker? No. Okay. My password? Your name? Yeah. Okay. I'm Jarek, and this is Kuba, and I'm terrified. Let's go. When we were thinking about it, this talk, it was like, I think, 2 months ago, when we decided to do something together. We decided that we will be honest. It doesn't happen too often in this industry, but we'll be honest, and we will share with you really biased and opinionated things we think about microservices. So what you will see in next 49 minutes is our version of microservices, how we see it, okay? And of course, because it's our version of microservices, it's good. Okay. We will try not to mention any technology, okay? No source code, I hope. And we will not try to convince you that it works, and I think actually we will try to say the opposite. But it's up to you to decide, okay, what you take for your presentation. I don't take responsibility for the next slides. Because, who knows Timothy Leary? Okay? Who is listening to Tool band? You know Timothy Leary. And you know who he was? He was the propagator of LSD. And he said one important thing about us and our industry. He was a psychologist, but he knew a lot about us. But we have to question authority, okay? Don't be, okay, stop. Question. If you leave the room from presentation, question. It was not right what you listened, because it was mine and his point of view, okay? We are not always right, sometimes funny. It's actually something that my wife says, I'm funny. When I'm going back home drunk. Okay. So, it's mine, I think. Yeah. Oh, okay, stuff. You don't know. Let's start, why people are so irresponsible and go to microservices. And you can say it about any architecture. I think we'll do the same presentation in 2 years about serverless. The same slide will just change microservices to serverless.
Yeah, and we should have done it about service-oriented architecture years back.
But it will come back anyway, so yes. we have slides for next 20 conferences. Okay. Have you ever thought about it? Why people are going to microservices? The reasonable people, intelligent, reasonable people, making data-driven decisions are going to microservices. Yeah? I think because it brings hope. Because what we need in our industry is hope. Not better frameworks, but hope. But sometime we'll find a working paradigm that functional will work. Yeah? Or maybe we'll find something better and it will work. And that we will find architecture which will always work. Actually, we found it. It's called Spring plus Hibernate. So we are looking for hope to do our job better and to do it less. Okay? This is the essence. We should work less, not more. The second thing is a kind of thrill. You should agree with me. Our work is boring. It's boring. My mother, when I work from home, he says, nothing happens. You sit, you click, sometimes shout. And when you put headphones on, shout more. And it's, 360 days a year. Okay, because we need an excitement. You know, how many REST services can you write in your life? I have on my desk, Kuba knows it, a special place with a knife, and every time I write another REST endpoint, I put a mark. So this is what you will see here, is the things we've seen in the organization we worked with, and the mistakes they made, and we will try to share it with you.
That's mine. No, I already have. Give me clicker.
Oh. So I have to hide, okay.
Yeah, that's my part. Why people are going microservices, or while people are going microservices, we've seen certain patterns emerging, or certain things that always happen, and certain things we pretty much want to run away from. So what usually, or very often happens in the organization, we have this cargo cult of architecture. We have the blessed architects in the ivory tower who once made that decision to make their life less miserable, and then they push this decision downstream to other engineers. So if you've ever encountered multiple POM files archetype in your Maven just to do a simple service, that's probably because someone at some point thought, yeah, that might be important. And yes, let's push it down to other engineers. And this cargo cult architecture can take many, many different forms. It can be in-house frameworks, or it can be our very specific, very domain-specific framework, or it might be just because our organization is very specific, which usually it isn't. And we see it in many parts of our organization, and we see it embraced or enforced or other engineers just to, for example, protect the existing status quo. And at the same time, the whole industry just runs away. It goes with its own pace, and the costs are growing. People are less willing to work with this blessed, enforced technology. And guess what happened? People start to build up their own stack, some people call it microservices, just to run away from this old bloody thing. Or they run away from this old bloody thing because they want to go faster, because at some point they've adopted Agile. And somebody told that we will now work in 2 weeks iteration, but our whole release cycle takes 2 months or 3 months. And that's 6 months, yes. And that's just because the technology we are having, the stack we are having within our organization, just is as old and as blessed as possible, and it doesn't allow us to move faster. So what we think is that we will try to run away with a different technology stack, or with a different frameworks, with a different approach.
Because the problem is, and you know what will come next, you know me, there will be the secret word. Everybody has it. Legacy. Okay? It's end up with having legacy. And you are not special. Yeah, I know this is, people are trying to tell you that you are special. No, you are not special. Because everybody in every organization has a smoking pile of shit called legacy. Okay? Everybody. It can be C++. It can be TPF. Who knows TPF? Yeah. Yes, I used to work with. It can be Rex. Who knows what is Rex? Yeah, you're too old. COBOL. Everybody knows COBOL. This is funny about COBOL. Everybody say it's ugly language, but nobody actually coded in it. How brilliant, guys. Cold Fusion. Hey, Cold Fusion guys. EJB 2.0, it's kind of legacy. PHP. Yeah, we have it, and it's okay. It's nothing bad. And let me explain you why. Because there is a tragedy behind your legacy. Really deep in the organization, a tragedy. The first thing is that hipster developers, probably nobody of us, because we are at conference, not at Starbucks, they don't work with legacy. They say, oh, I want to write from scratch. I will not make mistakes of these old people. You will be old someday, too. The thing is, problematic is that new technologies don't want to work with it. You can't have CDI in JBoss 4.2. Who has JBoss 4.2? The most popular EJB container in Poland. What happens is, behind this tragedy, is the organization reaches this state of equilibrium. Yeah? Everybody knows that it doesn't work, but nothing happens. People are coming, over coffee, oh, this is shit, yeah, this is shit. And you spend all time, saying this is shit, and nobody says, oh yes, it's hard, yeah, maybe someday. So you repeat that this is bad. Business, on the other side, needs features. Everybody needs new features. Executives, your CTO, CEO doesn't care about features. They care about business continuity. They don't care if somebody has a green button or pink button. They need continuity. Hipsters don't want to touch it. What's funny, seniors don't want to touch it. Because if they rewrite it, they will be fired. It's called job security effect. And this is the tragedy. This piece of code makes money in every organization. You don't want to touch it, because if you touch it, you lose the continuity, okay?
And quite often, if you touch it, a fire starts. Everything starts to fall apart and breaks down. So you smartly come up with yet another reason to go for a different stack, to go for microservices, because then you can try to tame those fires. You can see what places start to break apart, and don't touch it, and put all the new shiny things into a yet different place in your architecture, in your landscape. So you try to tame fires. So the problem is that when you have your monolithic application, you treat all your features as equal. And if one goes down, your whole system usually gets down. But the truth is, and we all know it, that not all features are equal. And very often we see that in the e-commerce industry, there are far less people actually buying stuff than searching on your site. And if your search doesn't work properly, that doesn't mean that they cannot pursue with their buying with their orders. But on the other hand, if the orders doesn't work, well, the search still can work, but it doesn't make really sense. But yeah, these are totally separate thing. But you still release them in an atomic way. You just bring them all together and go to production, no matter what you have inside, and no matter what you really need, and no matter what your business really wants to have. So with those things we see in our organization, with those precautions, with those levels of hell, people start to think, yes, we will change the architecture, we will change the approach and go for something totally different. And very often they don't really ask themselves whether they are ready for it and whether they've embraced all the things that they really need to go for this different architecture, for this different approach. So then the thing starts.
There is a place in an organization, somewhere in the basement, and there is a bald man, fat bald man, the architect. Nobody likes him, but he wants to feel important for some reason. So he goes to the conference and says, oh, microservices, that's cool, really? So what happens, this lonely architect sitting in his ivory tower, made of uncertainty and sadness, says, let's try new approach. Let's create small modules which has only one reason for a change. Imagine the guy saying to himself, lonely in the room, silently, terrified, because there will be change. Let's communicate over well-defined interfaces. Let the output of one microservice becomes the input of the another one. Let's create tools to automate things. Let's create new microservice rather than refactor the old one when requirements change. Let's embrace joy of distributed computers. We hadn't had problems and we invented distributed computers. Let's move fast and break things. And developers saw it was good. And they say, let's follow this funny architect. Maybe at least one time in his life he's right. Maybe. Let there be microservices, he says.
And then when we see ourselves in an organization that starts embracing the microservices, and we don't really want to go into whether it was a good decision or whether it was a bad decision. It was just a decision. And then we have to think, are we ready for it? What should we change, or should we change anything to go this path of microservices? And depending on, as Jarek said in the beginning, on various different organizations we've worked with or worked in, we've seen that very often engineers just want to go that way, but they are not there yet in terms of certain levels of maturity. And we've kind of walked through them. So the first thing we see very often is that people are not willing to take risk. People are not willing to do things that might not properly work out. But the truth is that if it hurts, you should do it more often. Because if your production deployment hurts and it takes few hours in the middle of the night on Sunday, then you should do it more often. Because you will start getting to the point where you will try to remove this pain. You will try to get better and things. And imagine that you had one monolith. It was distributed. It was distributed among, like, say, 6, 8, 10 servers. So it was still manageable. Now imagine that you have hundreds of those services, and still you will have the same pain of deployment, but multiplied by 100 units. This is not going to end up well. The microservices approach gives you a brilliant, quick feedback loop, and that's the whole approach, that I can span it out, I can run it, and I can see how it behaves, and whether it's working good or bad, and then shut it down, and reiterate. If your production process if your deployment process really hard, if your release cycle takes ages, then you cannot get it. You will never get this fast feedback loop that microservices people are always evangelizing about. They are always talking about it. So it's okay to deploy manually. Yes, fine. It's okay to deploy a monolith. But with this approach, you will never ever be able to embrace the whole set of different small services deployed individually. You have to go somewhere and automate. So there are always a few questions to ask. Whether I can automate the deployment, whether it is possible to have the automated deployment, the packaging, the development, the switch over of my production machines, whether I can automatically roll back, or whether it's totally not possible. Do I have to always go forward? Which is also a case, but I have to explicitly ask myself whether I am ready for it, or which approach I should be taking. And always have a few resolutions that I will never ever compile, repackage, or change the configuration manually. Or I will never ever hard encode the IPs or the ports or the configuration into my application code or into my application configuration. Because it will mean that I am still building a small units of code or small units, but I'm deploying a monolith. It's a distributed monolith. It's distributed not over multiple machines, not over multiple JVMs. It's distributed among multiple IP addresses and multiple ports. So things doesn't change much, but I think it's changed. Now it's your word guardians.
Yeah. Okay. Why it happens? Yeah. Why we can't automate? Why we can't don't have IPs in your code? Please, guys. 2017. Really. Why? Because we have something called walled gardens in our organization. The beautiful places where everything works. Do you know this pattern? Developers say it works. Testers say it doesn't work. When you go to production, developers say it works. The infrastructure says it doesn't work in my... So there are gardens where things work. For example, databases always work when there is a DBA in the company. When he leaves, for example, for a vacation, the database stops to work. I hate it. This is, totally against the things we are doing. This is unprofessional. I'm sorry. If you stand in this stupid Scrum meeting and you say, my job is done, because I committed the changes and it works on my laptop. This is not your job done. I'm sorry. If you have this approach in your organization, first you have to change it before going micro. This thing that it works on your machine doesn't impress me much. Don't ignore infrastructure. Developers are great at ignoring things. For example, that there is a CPU running their code. Surprise. But there is a storage which is not local. It's distributed because on your laptop you have SSD drive. In your production, you have network attached storage. Don't ignore infrastructure because your code is worthless without infrastructure. I'm sorry. If you ignore infrastructure, it will ignore you at some point of time. Badly. With 500 exception on the main page. This is the moment that people think I'm changing architecture, everything will be okay. No, you're changing the way the people work, okay? It's not changing architecture, it's not changing diagrams, it's not change of slogans, it's change of people, and it's the hard part. If you change architecture without changing the way you work, it won't work. And it is hard. Why? Because I discovered some time ago something I call the third Newtonian law of change management. I have a certificate from change management, actually. The third law sounds, if you push people, they will push back harder. Okay? If you say, you have to code Scala tomorrow. Come on, Scala tomorrow. Will you? Kotlin, do it. It won't work. You have to sell your ideas. You can't be literally standing in the front of your organization saying, we're going micro, but I don't want to. You don't want to? You have to. You won't make this decision this way. Because there are new tools to learn. There are new principles to understand. There are new patterns to be discovered. Lots of tons of learning. And believe me or not everybody wants to learn. Because if it would be so, we would have more people in the room. Not everybody. So for some people, this is just a job. And they don't want to learn. It's not bad. It's okay. And it's your responsibility, if you introduce change to the organization, to do it in a way these people will still feel comfortable. Sorry. And it all takes time. You won't migrate in microservices in a year, or 2, or 3. It will take ages. So the question you need to ask during this stage, what is your deployment unit? Are you deploying vars, or ERs, or Docker images, or zip files? How you externalize configuration, okay? How to make sure that services are discoverable, and this is really important. You want to make service discoverable for machine, that's okay, but it's also important to make it discoverable for other developers, so you avoid copy-paste microservices, because people don't know whether there is already a shopping cart in the organization. So you need to make it discoverable. So the resolution you have to make, I will never make manual changes on production. Really, don't, okay? Second thing, don't give roles to people. Don't call people's, this is funny, who has this job description? Senior Java backend. What it means? So it means you can't code in Bash? Or you can't write a simple web page? Never accept the organization structure as status quo. Things will change, okay?
And as Eric said, there's this learning process that you will have to embrace, that you will have to start. And the first thing you will start with is usually to try to learn and understand your system. Because very, very often we see engineers that really don't care how the overall application really works, because in their small walled garden, everything is fine. And then they don't really need to care if the same environment as they have on their laptop is on the production environment, is on the test environment, or wherever the application goes. They don't really need to know what happens in different modules of the same enterprise-grade system. However, no matter how perfect is your system, at some point it will fail, and it will fail very, very, very badly. So you need to understand how it operates on different levels. And when you had a monolithic application built on, for example, Spring, it might have seemed pretty easy. At least you have those few 100,000 lines of code in a single repository, and at some point you will really understand what's going on in there. Yeah, after a few months or after a few years. But when you go micro, those units are very small. This is nice. Those units are small. You should be able to learn them very quickly. You should be able to understand very quickly what's happening inside. But then you will have all those complexities that you had in your big application just pushed apart from your code base. It is still there, but you just push it into the other parts of your system, of your organization, or of your application. So you'll have to understand where it operates, what operating system it operates. You will have to understand whether it's running in the container, or whether it's virtualized, or whether it's a virtualized container running in another container. That all matters. It matters on performance, and matters how different things work in your application. You will have to understand whether it's running this virtual machine or the other, and then you have to understand the framework, and then last but not least, the business application or the business functionality that's built on top of that. And when you had your millions lines of code in your enterprise-grade application, you very often didn't really need it to get into the nitty-gritty details of, for example, JBoss application server. You had people for that, and you just trying to figure out how to make those bloody EJBs working together. And that was all fine, but if you decide to go micro, then that's something you will have to get into, and you will have to understand. Because very often you can see engineers that say, yeah, we are using Spring Framework, but they don't really care how exactly it works in the terms of dependency injection. But that's just basics. And if you decide to go micro, there are many, many different levels that you have to embrace, and that can break apart. So once you assume everything can fail, you can apply the ideas that microservices, for example, brings you to your already existing system. Because microservices brought a lot of nice ideas how to keep things working together, how to understand the communication, how to understand the contracts between different parts of the application. But no one ever said you cannot apply it in your monolithic code base, in your existing application. But to be honest, I've never really seen a circuit breaker implemented in a traditional Java Enterprise Edition application. No one ever cared about it.
Why not?
I don't know why. One thing might be that those remote calls were so deeply hidden under all those EJBs that you didn't really know. Sorry? You
have stubs.
Yeah. You didn't really know that you are calling remotely. That might have been one thing. But on the other hand, we don't really care. And we have all those circuit breakers, fallbacks, timeouts, and idempotent services. Things. Oh, this bloody word. Things we can apply already in our application before going fully micro. We'll just know the tooling, we'll have the mindset, we'll have the things already in our pocket, and then we can go further. And again, a few questions you can ask yourself. Do we really know how the shit works? Do we really know how the frameworks work, how the containers we are embracing are really working? Do we understand the principles behind the framework? If we say, yes, we will use circuit breaking, okay, and then we'll use this particular framework for circuit breaking, do we really bother how it works, whether it works on aspects or whether it works on callables or whatever? There are differences, and those differences impact how our code works. And we can embrace this early. We can start to look into those without going to the fully microservices-oriented architecture. We can just try it. We can just try it earlier. So again, a few resolutions. I will never ever treat the remote system as local. I will try to understand how it works and whether it's local or whether it's a remote system. I will never ever treat a happy path of the application flow as that's the only one, because things will break apart. And I will never ever treat my framework as a black box, because it's not. And it implies many different things.
Okay. People. I'm not a fan of people, with small exceptions. In small sips. You made me do it, organization implements, you know, hate you.
You wanted it.
No, I didn't. You have to change your organization. Why I'm telling about this? The first thing, and this is the biggest change your managers, it's not you. That's said that you don't have managers on this presentation because it's about them. This is the part, the slides for your managers. Accept and embrace failure. Things will break. And I call it shit hit the fan effect, where something breaks and our organization is on his feet. Everybody is fixing. But one thing break. Imagine if we have 100 microservices and all of them break every day a couple of times. It's nothing fancy. It just doesn't work, okay? If we did the job about the fallbacks and retries or idempotent services, I said it, the failure is something natural. We fail every time, every day. Our body fails. At this moment in your body, thousands of cells are dying, and it's okay. Failure is part of nature, okay? And organizations do this culture, you broke it, it's your fault. You have it in your organization, you try to fix something, and somebody is focusing, but why it doesn't work? I'm fixing it, but why it doesn't work? It doesn't matter why it doesn't work, you fix it. Stop pointing finger culture. I did my job, it's the infrastructure guys. No, testers didn't run the regression suite, they forgot it, they're stupid. You have to break with it. You're one organization. I sound like a CEO, I should be. Focus on fixing things, not blaming people, because you broke things tomorrow and your friend will break the things the next day. Everybody does it. We are not perfect, and it's fine. Don't make perfect systems. Don't spend hours on diagrams, drawing. Make a system that is resilient, that is able to respond to change, and change will come sooner or later, probably tomorrow. Yeah, decisions. Do you have an impression that at the C-level in your organizations, the majority of decisions are decisions of kids who have the same sandbox and just one pair of toys? They behave like kids, really. You have to change your organization and start making decisions on data because you have it, okay? If you are on the meeting and says, I feel, fire this person, okay? You are in IT, you don't feel, you have data, okay? You are a robot, and you have data, saying, I have a feeling that it will work. No, you don't have a feeling, you have to check it. So you have to change approach, that you measure, you introduce new feature, you check if people like it, if they don't like it, you kill it, okay? We analyze, we make a decision, reflect, and repeat. Based on data. Observability. Oh, do we have like 45 minutes about it? How much time do you spend when you're writing log statements in your application? Do you think what to log? Do you even take care about it? You don't, until the moment there is a fuck up. And you, if your logs have, sorry for Polish word dupa it doesn't work. You have to start to think about what you are logging and what you are measuring, and it becomes important. Logs are not only for you, are for your friend who will be on duty during the problem days. Yeah? You have to isolate failures. You can't break the whole application. Because we will be working hard against something that my personal hero, except Alan Kay, Leslie Lamport said, the failure of the computer you know even didn't exist. Okay? So the question you will have to ask yourself during this stage, is it okay in your organization to question everything? If you don't have this culture, you will have to change. The problem is that change comes from people from the C-level, unfortunately. Yeah? If they are you know how it works. If CTO shouts on their directors, the director will shout out their managers, and managers will shout out their developers, and developers don't care. The question is, are you tied to your job title? Is it really important? You are a software engineer, not back-end, front-end, tester, performance. You're a software engineer. This is privilege. Are you eager to learn? Or you are on JBoss 4.2 for the last 10 years and everything is fine, yeah? And this is, I added just 5 minutes before the presentation, because it struck me, are you product or project? Do you have product in your organization or you have projects? If you projects, with microservices you're destined to fail, because you will not be able to distribute the work, okay? Because the project has to be completed. Huh? So the resolutions, going closer to the end. I will never ever say who needs logs and metrics. I need it. Your friend needs it. A little bit of empathy. I will never ever let my system fail without my knowledge and acceptance. If it fails, if this is my decision, I say, okay, I tried to communicate 3 times with you, I give up. But this is your decision in the code, okay? I will never ignore the fact that things go wrong, and it's fine. And I will not sacrifice the system resiliency against any other unexpressed code.
So maybe the monoliths are here to stay.
I don't know.
So maybe it is not that bad to live with your monolith.
I've made shit of money on monoliths. It's okay. I love it.
Maybe your monolith is just a less distributed system.
It's true. Who said that distributed is microservices?
Things can fall apart in your monolith.
Oh, yeah.
Your integration points, your third-party external integration, your queues, your databases.
Mailing system.
Yeah, whatever. It can fall apart. It can stop working. In exactly the same way, your different distinct microservices will stop working. But in your monolith, you've never ever cared to build a circuit breaker around your third-party integration.
You can include histories in JBoss.
Yeah.
Should work.
Well, and maybe because we just became lazy, because there was this enterprise architect who just told us how everything works, and we just could have focused on very small, tiny, nitty-gritty details of our system.
The architect.
Or maybe we can automate the whole governance process of
Imagine how many money you can save, you know, taking into account how much enterprise architect earn. If you fire them, at least 2 more parties during the year for the whole organization.
Yes. And you can substitute them with Zipkin.
Yeah. Yeah, you can say, because when the system was designed, what is architect doing? Trying, at least, this is in his job description, but at least he will be trying to keep up to date the diagrams with the production code. Why you involve people to drawing something when you can get it from source code, like jQuery Assistant, Structurize, or Zipkin, the runtime information?
And if you have your external integration, why don't you already embrace the consumer-driven contracts? you can still work, because consumer-driven contracts are frameworks, but it's also a kind of a mindset. It's an approach to deal with external integrations, with external parties. And you can embrace it already. You can
I
start
have a great idea.
for another framework.
Yeah. Marcin, are you here? Doing the consumer-driven contracts for SOAP and WSDL files.
I think somebody already did that. And then you can treat everything as an event. Even in your monolithic system, it doesn't mean that it cannot be, it won't be probably event-driven, but you can start collecting those events.
This is the idea we came up recently with how to start migrating to microservices. The first thing, don't migrate. Okay? What you do, in every place in your application, you just publish event that something happened. You don't migrate, you don't split, because you don't understand your domain. You just add events, send somewhere, Kafka, RabbitMQ, JMS, whatever works for you, and you send these events that something happened. You start to build the pipeline and business processes and governance. And then, when the new requirement comes, you say, I have these events on an external system, so I can build it outside of the monolith.
Yeah, that's
And you start from events, not from bounded context, this REST and all this. The events is beautiful.
And then you can have, for example, centralized logging. Microservices are saying all about, collect your log from different services, because it's not that hard to understand why some bad things happen. It's hard to understand where it happened. So you try to centralize it, you try to collect it. And if you have your monolithic deployment around 5, 8, 10 nodes, and you have logs.
86
logs.
JBosses.
86 JBosses. And you have logs in each and every one of them. You already can start collecting them and centralizing them.
Imagine the
going
situation.
microservices.
Imagine the situation, you know it. I'm looking at you. We had 86 JBosses, and they were logging like crazy. Too many different files. So how we were looking for failures over 86 JBosses? So we were copying these log files to one destination, okay, in the single directory from 86 locations, and then doing grep.
Go Grylog. What? Go Grylog.
I don't know you. And you know that grep can kill production? If some interesting, intelligent human being called sysadmin says, I can put these logs on the same machine as the Oracle disks, yeah? And you do the grep.
So, are we there yet with being ready for microservices? Or shall we just refrain a little bit and stop for a while thinking, well, maybe I'll start changing with what I have than before fully embracing the microservices architecture?
I think so. The microservices introduces a lot of new concepts, but they are not microservices specific. You can have SQL Breaker on the Oracle. You can have Elasticsearch with any technology you have. You can push events from any technology. You can be distributed, scalable, and all these nice things without microservices.
Without Docker.
Without Docker.
And that's pretty much what we'll like to leave you with a question to ask. Maybe we should start with embracing those new shiny features, or those not so new shiny ideas of microservices already in our code base, because that will make our life less miserable. And that will make our more ready for embracing the fully microservices architecture without jumping the bandwagon.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So now we have 5 more minutes for questions. Jarek will be answering. So if you have any questions, you can either ask now or ping us on Twitter and whatever. There usually been beer coupons for the after party that could make the question pop up.
You can ask a question about private life.
Jarek will be answering. No questions.
It means the presentation was perfect.
and maybe nobody understand us. Okay, so thank you very much.